Inspiring, educating, and at times, entertaining. This is the Retirement Years Podcast with your hosts, Mary Ellen French and Dave Wing.
Hi there, I'm Mary Ellen.
And I'm Dave, and today we'll talk about how to turn a hobby into a small business in retirement. On today's episode, we'll be speaking with Rick Fernandes of Junco Brewing Company in Oswego, New York. As you'll hear from him, he spent his career as an engineer, mostly in plants and factories, and two of his hobbies were home brewing and carpentry. And before he retired, he started to plan on how he might turn his hobbies into a business in retirement.
You know me, I'm always interested in language and where language has come from. And I got curious, like, where did the word hobby come from? So I did a little research and just for definition purposes, a hobby is any regular activity that is done for enjoyment, typically during one's leisure time. And I think you're going to talk a little bit maybe about the history of where hobbies came from, but I mean, really anything can be a hobby, right? Like playing sports is a hobby, unless you're getting paid to do it.
Yeah.
And hobby can look like collecting something like stamps or coins or, whatever, something like that. Hobbies can look like artistic pursuits. Lots of people paint or they do pottery or, yeah. Anyway, that's really what a hobby is something that you do in your leisure time. And of course, hobbies change over time, right? I mean, what people used to do for hobbies even 100 years ago has changed dramatically. I mean, the most popular hobby, I think I read that in 2024 anyway, was video games, right? And that makes sense given the advances in technology.
Yeah, our hobbies would have looked quite a bit different. Like, for example, lining hockey cards up along the wall, and then you take your other hockey cards, and whoever knocks them down by flicking them, if you're playing keepsies, well, then now they're my cards. So be careful which ones you use. And if we have anyone listening right now under, say, even 40, they're going, what is a hockey card?
Yeah, true.
But it's funny because you may associate the word hobby with hobby horse, which was back long ago, 16th century. That was the way it was pretty much exclusively used. And then it became over centuries to be associated with leisure time, as you said. And in its early phases, it wasn't a very kind thing if I said that, you're always, fussing with your hobbies.
Right.
Kind of you're doing something childish.
Right.
And as you said, with more leisure time that people have now over way back when you literally had to work to live all the time, hobbies became, as you were saying, more varied, definitely more acceptable, in a nice way to pass some time or educate yourself.
Right. Yeah. And like you said, back in the day, as my grandfather used to say, unfortunately, leisure time and hobbies, specifically, hobbies were considered, I can still remember my grandmother talking about this, the devil's work, right? Like playing cards, right? You certainly didn't do that on a Sunday. And, there was no time to be doing that during the week because you were too busy, or you should have been too busy because there was always something to do.
Yeah.
And, really times have changed. And a lot of that has come about because of industrialization. There's so many conveniences now, if you will. And so we have more leisure time. And so we're able to take up hobbies and do things that bring us enjoyment. And that's really been a cultural shift, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and Rick has a hobby that he thoroughly enjoys, and he has some skills that he can apply already that he already had. And with Junco Brewery, he found the perfect way to have an outlet for the things he truly enjoys, and fortunately he had a piece of property he could use as well. But we take for granted now. You go into any town, city, especially that has maybe draws tourists. There, you are going to find one, if not more, a craft brewery or a microbrewery, a small place like that, and sometimes not that small, but a medium size. But that was not the case prior to the 1960s. The
No.
1960s, you'd have bars, pubs, sure, but they were serving the big labels of beer. That's what you're going to get there. And the North American craft brewing movement, the 1960s and 70s is when it really started to stir up. And one of the key events was the revival of Anchor Brewing in San Francisco. And I know listeners that are anywhere from near that area will know exactly what we're talking about. And of course, also the legalization of home brewing in 1978, because you really shouldn't have been
Hmm.
selling it and advertising that you're making your own. But
Right.
from virtually the 80s, pretty close to the 80s on, and then now that just opened the floodgates and the wave of microbreweries, and they'd find a more flavorful combinations, that sort of thing,
Hmm.
but very small compared to the mass-produced beers and
Hmm.
lagers that would be more mainstream and still are a perfect fit for certain situations.
Hmm.
That's for sure.
Hmm.
Past a couple of decades, um, like I said, if you go into a medium-sized town, you're likely going to find more than one nice
Hmm.
microbrewery that you can go and try. And there's been different techniques being employed and flavors that you never would have dreamed
No.
20 years ago that would
No.
be in a beer.
Hmm.
And like I know you mentioned that a fruit beer on a
Oh.
hot day when it's
Yeah.
icy cold is even
Oh.
even an old stick in the mud like me would agree with you. That's a nice, refreshing treat on a summer day.
Yeah. And that reminds me that when my husband and I were on a trip out west this spring, um, he ordered a craft beer when we were in a Mexican restaurant, and it turned out it was a dark beer, but it turned out to have like chocolate notes to it.
Mm,
And he wasn't a big fan, but I actually enjoyed it, which is unusual because I'm not really a beer fan.
yeah,
But man, I really liked that one. That one was good. Dave, as I said, I do love learning where language comes from, right?
yeah.
And I'm always fascinated by how we as humans uh, come to create new hobbies, new pastimes. So let's move on to our interview with Rick from Junco Brewing Company in Oswego, New York, and our listeners can hear how he transitioned two of his favorite hobbies into a small business. So, Rick, welcome to the Retirement Years podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a bit about your career before you retired and considered becoming a brewmaster.
Well, I started out in life as I went to a merchant marine academy. So as I got a bachelor's degree in marine engineering, which is more about power plant operations, on a ship. And that transferred over to power plant operations and power plants in general. And I've worked in a bunch of different places: shipyards, power plants, construction, engineering, and operations as well. So pretty rounded. I started out after college building submarines for the
Mm,
Navy, working in a private shipyard. And I've always kind of done construction one way or another. If it's not at work, I'm remodeling my house or somebody else's house. And so yeah, so it was about 40 years of power plants and just equipment and operations. And so I think it gave me a pretty good background with all the equipment in a brewery, and it was kind of a natural rollover. Being used to working with pressurized gases, temperature, water controllers, all that stuff, all the kind of mechanical stuff that folks don't realize over the years. You pick up that experience, it pays off, and I saw a 20-year-old young man the other day trying to put propane in a 20-pound propane tank, and he wasn't even sure which way to turn the valves. And you just kind of, after years, you take all that stuff for granted, but you remember at one point in your life you were probably the same. And but all that being said, I think all that background helped to make the technical side and the process side easier for me. So yeah.
And
So
I'm curious to know, sorry, Dave, I'm curious to know, Rick, at what point did the idea to become a brewmaster occur to you?
I would say probably 2 or 3 years before we opened up, so maybe about 7 years ago. I was talking. I was talking with some folks, and I told them, I can't drink all the beer that I make. I enjoyed making beer as a home brewer, and I just couldn't get rid of it all. And they said, "Well, why don't you sell it?" And I was like, "Oh, well, maybe that's something to look into." And so it was a couple of years before I retired, I started doing the research, and it was all, and most of it was because I enjoyed making it. What am I going to do with all this stuff?
Got it.
And so so I would say it was a couple of years before I retired.
Okay, thanks.
Making more beer than you can drink, what a terrible problem you had, right?
Yeah.
And I in looking up and learning more about you, you like to travel, and we talk to a lot of people as well on a retirement podcast about people who love to travel, and it had an impact too on, like, your work is the physical part and the understanding of, like you said, of systems. And then your travels in the United States and Europe also helped to kind of shape, I think, some of the decisions you made going forward in deciding to, branch out in your brewing and perhaps then later opening the pub.
Yeah. I think one of the things I really, I found interesting is, when I did travel and I would go to these places and I would practice judging their beer and ask a lot of questions. And if the brewers were around, I'd talk to the brewer, I'd go on a brewery tour. So I collected information, but kind of also what I noticed is that, people generally were just enjoying themselves. And to be in an atmosphere like that where everybody's kind of having fun
Yeah.
and enjoying and chatting, and I would just show up there at the tap room bar, and I'd sit down with my notebook, and I'd order up some beer, and I'd start doing some writing, and people would come over and go, "Well, what are you doing?" I go, "Well, I'm evaluating the beer." "What? Evaluating the beer?" I go, "Yeah." I go, "It's just like wine tasting. There's categories, there's things that you judge the beer on." And it just generated a lot of conversation. And people would chat and like to talk. Um, so it was good because I got to see a lot of different environments and atmospheres. And I think, one thing that's really changed since I think I was a young man is, the tap rooms don't necessarily have all the TV screens and the ball games on and the jukebox in the background, and guys shooting pool and people yelling at each other. That a lot of the tap rooms are kind of quiet. People go there, play board games, bring the dogs, bring the kids, and it's a different environment. And so I kind of like that. And I didn't want to be a sports bar, and
Yeah.
and actually I didn't even really until the last minute think about, oh my goodness, that's right, I can make all this beer, but I have to sell it. And then you go, oh, that's a whole different ball of wax, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's the traveling and going to all the different places was a learning process for the technical skills and the knowledge, as well as kind of the tap room experience, the layout, the equipment, the ice makers, water machines, all that stuff that you really don't think about when you're brewing in your kettles and working with your fermenters. You got this whole other half of the business that you've got to learn and get up to speed on.
Yeah.
Well, that makes total sense to me. And what I hear and what you're describing is that it's building community, really, right? Like the people who
Right.
enjoy coming to a tap room are there for that particular experience.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me into my next question, which is, why do you think smaller breweries are so popular? Like we have a lot of them here in Canada. I know you guys have lots there in the United States. What do you think it is that makes them so popular?
Well, I think one thing is people are learning over the last couple of decades, and it's very geographical. It moved very fast in some places, other places kind of slow. But I think in general, a lot of folks are understanding there's more there's more out there than just Pilsner, light Pilsner lager, that the big beer companies are making. And I tell people it's an analogy to like after World War One, everybody was eating Wonder Bread, white bread, white bread, white bread, white bread, and everybody forgot that there's all these other types of breads out there. Well, it's the same thing with beer, and I think what's happening is the next couple of not just generational, everyone, all across the age spectrum are learning that, hey, wait a minute, I can have an ale, I can have something with fruit in it, I can have something that tastes a little has a little bit of taste to it. And so I think that's really helped to push the smaller breweries and the craft breweries, and and also the atmosphere. Like I said before, it's back in the day, it was a loud, a boisterous place, and nobody really thought about bringing their dog or their kids. And you got like our places out in the country, people sit out in the yard on chairs, and the kids are running around, and the dogs, and especially where you've got these younger folks where they've got they're both working. It's hard to find babysitters. They want to get out, get away from the house. We have the regulars that show up on Saturday afternoon. They have a pint or two. The kids are running around, and so they have a place where they can they escape to. So I think maybe the overall picture of the alcohol environment or the drinking environment has changed a lot from the days of punch the clock and go up the hill and drink the quart of beer.
Right.
So I think that's part of it. Yeah.
So Rick, you mentioned obviously the variety in flavors and styles and all the rest. If you could describe, like, is there a way like that you could describe, generally speaking, what types of beer you like to produce and sell? And then, of course, the important question for when I make it down there, and I know my money was no good there, but I'm going to insist that what is your most popular? There's probably one that is most popular.
Well, it's we have a bunch of customers. It seems this year everybody went to Ireland, and they all come back, and they tell me about over there how they even over there the Irish pubs are starting to carry IPAs, because you Americans, that's all you want is these hoppy IPAs. So our IPA is popular. But I don't consider our place a heavily IPA. I have 10 taps and one cider and one IPA, and the rest are kind of your classical porter stout. We have probably our biggest seller is our Pilsner,
Mhm.
and because we're still in an area that's heavily overrun by Eagle Beverage and Budweiser products. So a lot of the beginners come in and they, what do you have that's like a Bud Light, or
Yeah.
what do you have that's like a Pilsner? I go, well, I got a Pilsner. I said, but it's craft Pilsner. It's got a little bit more flavor. So that's probably our biggest seller. But I kind of try to stay with the styles that you find, the classic styles. We've got a brown ale, an amber ale. The amber this year does really well. I like some of the German stuff, so we have a Hefeweizen this year that really took off, and I pretty much always have a Hefeweizen on tap. I know for some reason here in central New York, not a lot of places carry them, but when I was out working and traveling towards Michigan, everybody out there had a Hefeweizen, and I was like, boy, this is really good. I'm gonna put one of those on. A couple of the local restaurants like to keep our porters and stouts on through the winter. So I make a little bit of extra of that and sell them those kegs to carry them through the winter. So yeah, I would say the Pilsner, the IPA, and the porter, and then of course the fruit beers, right? I mean, all the people who aren't typical lager drinkers really love the fruit beer. My blueberry wheat sells very fast, and um, we make a blood orange wheat, and I have a lime cherry sour. So I try to keep some of that stuff on tap through the summer. I try to keep a fruit beer on. Um, and the sour goes really fast too, and so now I'm getting to the point where I got some real popular beers, and it's hard for me to keep up with them.
Yeah.
But that's a good thing. People come back, and I think what's really neat, I hear it a lot, is the people go, I've never had a bad beer here. And well, that's good. That's
That's nice
good.
to
And
hear. Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just I just stick to the typical styles. I do a little bit of research and I find out, the gold medal winners, what do they use for hops, barley, and their yeast, kind of profiles. And I kind of just gather that information, and generally the beer comes out drinkable. And if I mess it up a couple of times, we got some ways sometimes that we can fix them by doing other things with them, put fruit in,
Yeah.
So yeah, but I would say people definitely know that they're not going to come to our tap room and have 6 different IPAs and 3 or 4 hazies, because I think the crowd likes the big blend, and I just don't, I don't want to keep just pounding away on 1 or 2 particular styles.
Yeah.
And and our crowd's an older crowd. I mean, we get young adults that have children, and then all the way up to 80 years old. And it's even though we have a college within 1.5 miles with us, there very few college students come out, because they're not, they generally don't want to pay $6 a pint, when they don't have jobs, and which is fine. They stick in the city and they go to the little sports bar, and so it works out pretty good.
Dave, I'm going to let you take the next question.
Okay, because I was just thinking as Rick was going over that lovely list, what do I have in the fridge right now? But anyway, I'll get back to that. As I mentioned, Rick, to you before we started recording, my parents had a business for over 50 years. They ran this little bait and tackle shop just a few miles from the border. And I know, because I was working as soon as I was tall enough or smart enough to be of any use, they put me to work. And it's a lot of work. Mary Ellen's family had a farm. That's harder work still, but same sort of idea. You're always married to it. There's something to be done. You're thinking about it. So I guess, would you describe what you're doing more as a labor of love?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's it's a good thing that we've already put our kids through college and paid off loans and all that stuff and own our property. Yeah, because at our small scale, it's not, it's not really profitable, especially since we don't sell food. So it is a labor of love. I enjoy doing it. It's a go. I enjoy making the beer, and interacting with the customers. My wife and I, we basically serve the beer in the tap room 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5 nights a week, and in our busy night we have a couple of helpers. But yeah, I enjoy doing it. It's I tell people, they're like, well, why do you keep doing this? And I go, I enjoy doing it. And my other passion is construction and carpentry and woodworking. So so we're continually kind of tweaking on this old barn. It allows me to do my woodworking and fix this and this. And this year, or this late couple of weeks ago, we added a serving area up in the loft and the old hay loft section of the barn. And so I get to kind of do both things, a little bit of woodworking and making beer, and then interacting with the customers, and it's that constant challenge of trying to get your sales up a little bit, and get people to come in, and the cold nights you're running around filling propane tanks and lighting torches. Hot days you're running around putting fans everywhere. Or next thing you know, we had a pigeon move into the barn, and so we're all trying to chase this pigeon out, and so there's always something going on. And then this year we added, actually we started last year, a 9-hole disc golf course on the property.
Oh.
So that means I got to get out there with a lawnmower and keep things cut and clean. And so it's an endless list of things to do. And but that's what I wanted to do in retirement. I wanted to stay busy, and I'm not rich enough to travel the world on a big yacht and go diving in the Keys. So I just got to stay busy.
I like it. I think that's a very good plan you have there, Rick.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Rick, what advice would you offer someone who has a passion that they're considering turning into a business venture? Because that's really what you did, right? Like what would
Yeah,
you say to them?
I guess the big thing is do your homework.
Mm,
Really, before you make big commitments, really take a, study the business or study the hobby or really investigate what you're going into. Talk to other people who are in the business. I mean, we're fortunate in the craft brewing business. All the brewers are all work together. There's some competition, I'm sure, in so many areas where the places are getting a little bit bigger. But all the nano brewers, you call them up and you say, "Hey, how do you do this or how do you do that?" Da 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 da. They're all very helpful. So do your homework and really lay out, because you're going to get a lot of surprises. But the more studying you do and research you do, it'll help you minimize the amount of surprises you're going to get. Um, and I think, along that line, some of the surprises we got was when you start your own business, you get all these people somehow manage to get money out of you that you, wait a minute, I didn't know I'd have to pay that. Wait a minute, I didn't have to pay that. And do some work with find out the zoning and the planning boards and all that. Your utilities, depending on what the business is, make sure your utilities are going to match up, whether it's propane, oil, electric, if do you need three-phase, single phase, all that stuff is stuff that you got to take a look at up front, because all of a sudden you start rolling into this and you go, oh my goodness, there's thousands of dollars going out for something.
Yeah.
Something as simple as septic systems. Are you in city septic, sewer, country sewer? Do you need special permits? And then, the music business, when you want to play music in your place of business, you got all these companies calling you, wanting you to pay for a license just in case one of your singers or somebody turns on the radio and plays their song. So you have all these little, everybody wants a little piece of the pie, right? I mean, so it's not just sales tax, it's, Speedy's permit tax, water sampling analysis, so it's all this stuff starts stacking up and you go, oh my
yeah,
goodness. And, not to mention insurance, rent, and everything else. So,
right.
so the big thing is to do your homework and really lay out a plan and run the numbers. Be honest with yourself. If you're trying to make a profit, if you want to make a profit, kind of get an idea of what you can do. And then if that matches up and it's something you want to move forward with, then you can go ahead and do that. And the other thing is don't go too big too fast. When I first
Mm,
started getting ready to start a brewery, everybody said, "Oh, 7-barrel brewery, 5-barrel brewery minimum. Don't go any smaller than that." And that was a lot of money. And we ended up just doing a 1-barrel brew house, all paid for, and it keeps up with the current demand. We opened up in a county where there was no tap rooms, where there was no craft brewery, so we weren't even sure it was going to be a go. So say
yeah.
you do that somewhere and you've laid out $500,000 for stainless steel and equipment, and all of a sudden it's not going right. So the big thing is, yeah, do your homework, run the numbers, and make sure your spouse is on board with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that last piece may be important that a spouse or partner's with you, that's for sure.
Yeah,
And,
that's a whole nother Zoom call.
yeah, and then figuring out who's the boss.
Yeah.
So Rick, you're seasonal and
Yeah,
you just closed this weekend.
right.
So could you tell us, I guess there's anybody listening may, and if they're within a reasonable distance, they'd be very interested in dropping in, given the atmosphere you've said, and I hear very good things about the beer. So, when do you open up in the spring, and where can they physically find you? And if someone's interested in finding you on social media, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. We've been opening up in April. April this year, next year it'll be April 23rd. It's typically the third Wednesday in April, and we close up about the third Sunday in October. And if they were trying to find us, we're members of the New York State Brewers Association, and they have an app, a free app that has a map of all the breweries in New York State. And along with that, it links to Google Maps. So we're on Google. If you get in the area and you just Google breweries near me, we get a lot of people that find us. We're in Oswego, New York, which is about a half hour north of Syracuse, right on Lake Ontario. And we're a little bit out in the country. So, Google Maps is, if you're not from the area, you definitely want to map it. And we have a little sign. We're on Cemetery Road in Oswego, the town of Oswego. So we're just outside the city. The city of Oswego has, I don't know, about 17 or 18,000 people. It's not very big. The college is a very sizable college. It's near SUNY Oswego. And as far as social media, we don't do a whole lot of advertising. We don't have a website, but we are on Facebook. So you can always, search for Junco Brewing on Facebook, and our email is very simple, juncobrewing@gmail.com. That's probably the best way to reach out to us. I get the emails 24/7, and we check Facebook every morning. We try to keep it simple. It's just the two of us, and having a website and all this other stuff just adds more.
Yeah.
Adds more, not just t-shirts and labels and hats, and now you're in front of the computer for a couple hours a day. So, that's the best way to find us. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rick.
You're welcome.
I am very inspired by what I learned today. And I have to tell you, even though beer is not my thing, I'm pretty excited to come and try, at the very least, some of the fruit beers, because I do like a nice fruit beer. So I'm really happy that you make those. And my husband is going to be very excited that there's an app and it's free, and we can go visit all kinds of tap rooms down there. So thank you very much for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, and I hope you all enjoy the business and your hobby here on the web.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Dave, I know exactly why we interviewed Rick. Mm-hmm. Like you must have thought that this man is living out your fantasy, right? He took his love of drinking craft beers and judging beers, and he turned it into a business, right? Like all in the name of research, by the way, right? And I can
absolutely.
totally see you selling this to your spouse. Yes, dear, I need to go on a 2-month beer tour because I'm going to be a judge and I've got to do some research. I think this is a great hobby for you in retirement.
Yeah, I think I would try to sell it. I think the success of that endeavor would be limited, but I'll give it a try. And Rick described, at least to him, what he sees as the difference between a tap room and a pub.
Yes.
And atmosphere is a big part of it. Obviously, tap rooms don't tend to have TV screens and jukeboxes, pool tables, that sort of thing. Well, they could, but they don't tend to. And they're often quiet. You'll see board games there available. The crowd favorites. They can go over and take them to a table and enjoy a couple hours. Bring the dog, bring kids. In other words, not a sports bar, much quieter. Now, in Rick's case, it is, as he said, it's family friendly because you've got a great space outdoors where kids could run around and play, and that's not as popular when you're indoors to have kids running around and playing when you're enjoying a quiet pint. But yeah, he's got the outdoor space, and I do know from following Junco Brewery on Facebook that they have musical guests with some regularity, and you know that if you're going that night, it's going to be live music, and then various food vendors come and sell food there too. So it sounds like and like he said, he doesn't try to appeal to the college crowd, even though one's nearby, but he has regulars, and someone like you or me may pop by just to see what it's all about. I think it sounds like a wonderful stop.
Oh, absolutely. And a tap room has all the community feel to it that one might be looking for, right? That, you don't necessarily get in a, say, a sports bar,
Yeah.
for example. I mean, you do if you're going to a sports bar and it's the playoffs for a particular sport and everybody in there is cheering for, a particular team. That's one thing, but a tap room, it fosters a sense of social connection
Yep.
in a way that I think is really unique, right? And we've talked, well, we talked a lot in season two in particular about the importance of social connection for older adults in particular. It's important for everybody, but it's really important when it comes to older adults' mental well-being. So yeah, I think what he's got there at Junco Brewery is pretty cool.
Yeah. And I like how you can tell Rick's a very thoughtful person. He thinks
Mm.
things out.
Hmm. Yeah,
And his main piece of advice was do your homework, do your
yeah,
research if you're going to try to turn a hobby into a small business.
yeah.
And there are many aspects. I grew up in a family business. I wouldn't even know how, like in today's world, what I'd need to consider. And
Right.
some of the advice that Rick gave was, study the hobby or the business
Yeah,
and investigate what you're going into. Like you just can't say, I want to brew beer. Well, okay, how
yeah.
how are you going to do that? What's the cost of the startup? Talk to others who are doing it.
Hmm.
People love to share. Like if they have a little piece of expertise, they'll
Yeah,
they'll unless if you're going to open up across the street, that might be
a
might be
little different.
different. But most people would say, here's what I would have never done or what I should have done. Uh,
Hmm.
Lay out the plan, run some numbers. It's going to cost me this, and this is the overhead, and I'd have to hire staff. And don't go too big, too fast was a good one. You
It
know,
was.
and in his case, he did that.
Yeah.
And then I think his best piece of advice, at least if you want peace for any of your life you have remaining, is make sure your spouse or partner is on board with this idea.
Yes.
That would be pretty important.
Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely. And I loved too that Rick was able to incorporate not just one of his hobbies, but two of his hobbies,
Yeah.
right? How fortunate is he to have those carpentry skills and, the ability to renovate? It sounds like he's continually renovating the barn space
Yeah.
where the brewery and the tap room are located and added a 9-hole disc golf course, you know, which which is really important because not only does his tap room now offer social connection, but it also offers the opportunity for getting physical,
Yeah.
which is very important to one's well-being, both physical and mental. So that's awesome. I just think it's really great, that it's possible to turn something you love into a small business. What starts off as a leisure activity that you enjoy outside of work when you're still working can become your new work, in air quotes, after retirement. And you do it because you love it. And so because you love it, it doesn't necessarily feel like work,
Yeah. Because
right? It's a labor of love.
if it was a labor and not a labor of love, that's a big difference. And
Oh gosh, yeah.
it's very clear that
Yeah.
he loves being the brewmaster and the owner of Junco Brewing Company. Uh,
Yeah.
and just for those people listening and they may be near the border and want to pop over into upper New York State, they're located on Cemetery Road in Oswego, New York, not far from Syracuse. And
Hmm.
Syracuse would be where you could start and say, okay, now I find because Oswego's a lot smaller.
Yeah.
They opened up this spring, April 23rd, and
Hmm.
they're open until the third Sunday in October. And he likes to have that firm, the bookends so that he can plan things outside of that because it wouldn't give them a lot of leisure time during the summer. Um, Kind of a cool thing. New York State Brewers Association has a free app. It's called
Yeah.
New York Craft Beer.
Hmm.
You can download that, check it out, and it's your guide. You can go around and find all these really cool small brew pubs and breweries and tap rooms and try them out.
Yeah.
Um, of course, you can always, you can Google Junco Brewing Company, but the app would be a good idea too. They have a Facebook page. You can check that out. Their email, if you want to reach out to them, is juncobrewing@gmail.com. So, Mary Ellen, next time on the Retirement Years podcast, we're going to hear from Mag Rochin, an entrepreneur who helps other entrepreneurs transition to retirement. I think that's pretty neat. So, until next time, I'm Dave.
And I'm Mary Ellen. Stay well.
On behalf of your hosts, Mary Ellen French and Dave Wing, thank you for listening to the Retirement Years podcast. Please follow us on social media and tell a friend.